All right, it's 9 a.m. Pacific. Let's get started. This is the Media Over QUIC virtual interim. This is the only one between our Boulder meeting and IETF 125. As always, this session is being recorded. This is the IETF note well. It covers the intellectual property implications you being here, as well as outlining the code of conduct. If you're unfamiliar with the note well, or never seen it before, or have never actually bothered to go read it, feel free to scan the QR code that you see on your screen and read up to your heart's content. As always, we're using, for our virtuals, we're using Meet Echo, as you have already figured out. If you want to join the MOQ or participate in show of hands, you can use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. In general, you should have your audio and video off. If you are going to say anything, it is very good to have headphones because of the noise cancellation properties of this tool. If you are not using headphones, you will be muted fairly aggressively by the chairs to preserve the noise experience of everyone else. If you're in a back and forth conversation, feel free to just leave your mic on, modulo this headphone issue. Unmuting does have a lag of about a second, so if you're about to talk, please do press the unmute button a little earlier than you might otherwise do so. We need a scribe for today.
I will do it.
Thank you, Magnus. As participants, you should all be ashamed of yourselves that a chair has to do the scribing. So please do feel bad. Okay, upcoming dates in our normal fire hose of deadlines. Here's the latest snapshot. We just concluded the deadline for interim venues. There are a total of 2 proposals, one for London, one for Istanbul. There's currently a poll out that expires on, actually, I think I extended that to the 28th, which is the Saturday. So you have a week to put in your preferences for where you would like the Europe interim to be. Today is the deadline for the draft 16 diff consensus call. I am open to anyone that wants to raise their hand and say they need more time to review this. I think we've postponed it a few times in the past. I know that the implementing community has been kind of racing to catch up with draft 16. So, feel free to speak up if you think you need a little more time. The adoption call for secure objects ends tomorrow. Agenda requests for 125 are due on March the 2nd. And if you have any comment, I also released the virtual interim dates from between IETF 125 and our Europe interim, which will be June 9 to 12. If you have comments about the dates I proposed, which are basically all Mondays except for the Memorial Day week in the US, which will be on a Tuesday, please do share them by the 9th of March. I can put in the time. There's also some feedback that we should go to a weekly rhythm. So that's 90 minutes every week. I feel a little reluctance given the already crushing load of this working group, but feel free to, at the time you're sending your comments on the meeting dates, feel free to share your feedback about going to a weekly rhythm, presumably on Mondays, 9 to 10:30 Pacific time. Where, again, we welcome comments and the chairs can make a determination if we're going to do that. And then, of course, finally, IETF 125 in mid-March. Alan.
Yeah. Can we talk a minute about, because I was the one who made the request about meeting weekly.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll just say that, if you recall our interim from the first week of the year, we're trying to close things down. And so I'm not sure if everyone's feeling the urgency, but I am, and would like to spend the time we need to resolve the issues that we have. And I'm also open to an idea that we only have we keep the formal interims every other week, but then maybe virtual design teams that are working on ABR or other bigger pieces, use that off week to meet on their own to to advance the ball. But just we need I'd like to make a push here to get to done. So that's my thinking.
Thank you, Alan. Here's today's agenda. We just completed our talk about virtual interims, at least began the discussion about it. We're going to have Ian talk about the bidirectional streams PR, which I think is close to landing. And then we're going to try to resolve the switch issue. Hopefully Gwendol has resolved the issues that came up in Boulder, and we can we have an hour to try to get that done. If for some reason we finish a little early, Alan, as always, has his queue of stuff that can fill the time. So Ian, are you on? Yes, he is. Okay, so yeah, the floor is yours.
Sure. There we go. All right. So these slides are kind of a minor update from January 12th, but I wanted to reflect some of the things that happened in the Boulder interim and some other minor updates to the PR. So just on a high level, because I didn't really talk about this before, but there are a number of issues linked later. But for me, at least, the motivating factors around headline blocking between requests, particularly for relays. It creates a number of challenges. One particular unfortunate quirk of the draft today is if you run out of flow control, you can't actually cancel a subscription until you get more flow control. This fixes that problem, but that seems sad. And I mean, request update, even if maybe it's not perfect, is certainly much better after this PR. And yeah, there are a number of use cases that we think we might want to add more information to per request info. Object ACK is one of them, but a number of other things have been mentioned. But I think everyone's a little hesitant to add a ton of stuff to the single BiDi control stream today. So the draft today, we merged 1344 before draft 16, and I think 1430. I can't remember if it was right before or after draft 16. That moves subscribed namespace to its own bidirectional stream. So each subscribed namespace is on a BiDi stream. And then 1430 kind of fixed the text around auth to make sure that that kind of works correctly with bidirectional streams. All right. This is kind of an overview of the PR. The PR is not substantively changed, but it moves all of the main request types onto their own bidirectional control stream, just like subscribe namespace. It does not in any way change how objects are sent. If we want to do that later, we can, but this does not touch that. It removes things like max request ID blocked, and uses quick stream limits, and ends up removing, last time I checked, 127 lines of code, of text, sorry, and 6 control messages, which is nice. All right, since the Boulder interim, people wanted to maintain the ability to add sequencing or add headline blocking for certain messages. So the PR now adds a required request ID that must be delivered to the application kind of prior to this request. So it's delta encoded. So if it's 0, then it means you don't depend on anything. If it's another value, then it means you're referencing a previously sent request. So kind of this ability to buffer and everything already kind of exists for other reasons. So it doesn't really change the implementation load that much. So yeah. But it maintains kind of the functionality we have today of, I guess joining fetch being the most obvious one, but any other case where people want to do A and then B, it at least gives you the opportunity to make sure that A arrives and is kind of processed at some level before B is. Here are all the issues it fixes and a few that kind of it improves in some way, shape, or form, particularly startup latency. And that's my last slide.
So Ian, clarifying question. So request ID still exists, but they are basically arbitrarily chosen to be unique by the sender. Is that correct?
Yes, and if you want to have a required request ID by the wiring and coding, it has to be less than the current request ID. So I mean, they kind of have to be monotonically increasing for a number of reasons.
Okay, so there's that one small requirement, but other than that, you can do whatever.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so related to that question, I think the language in the spec is similar or the same to what we have for, which is like it starts at 0 or 1, you increment by 2, and with the draft 16, like you can't really enforce the next one is because the streams may have arrived out of order. But I think that's important for receiver tracking to implement this ordering feature, because once you've seen every request ID below a certain number, you don't need to track every request ID you've ever seen. You can just say, I have seen every request ID that's lower than 20 or 100 or 1,000. And so if somebody asks, they say, oh, I depend on request number 2, then you don't have to have like a giant map of every request you've ever seen. So I think it's still important that the sender choose them in an increasing order. And the other thing that one of your slides said, but I don't remember if it's in the PR or not, it says request update doesn't use request ID, but I think you still need it in case you have like request update 1 depends on, or request update 10 depends on request update 8. So I think you still need request IDs in request update so that you can depend on them. But you don't need to say what request you're updating because it will come on the BiDi stream.
Yeah, sorry, that's text I should have updated from the slide. This originally was written before.
Oh, okay, great.
Oh yeah, you're right. No, you can in theory have a request ID in request updates, but you don't have to specify the one it is depending upon. Yeah, and they don't have.
Okay.
Hey, in just a couple of questions, is there no ability to reuse the same control stream you've just established? Because that would also give you this head of line blocking ability without having to do a sort of reference request ID. In other words, you make your first request, you get the control stream, but then you can put your second request onto that same control stream as a client.
That creates some other challenges that I was kind of hesitant to go down. One is things like if you cancel that stream, does that mean it cancels both? And also you have things like request update and such that are, if you want to request update, for example, to depend on.
You would still have unique request IDs. You would just be using the same control stream to get your head of line blocking and therefore get your sequencing, right? You wouldn't lose your ability to independently reference them with a different request ID.
Yeah, I mean, I did think
that was a simpler design than the Delta.
I think that changed. That's just a very different design than what's here. Like saying like, oh, you just create N control streams and you can batch operations on them. That's a different design. I think that loses maybe some of the properties that Ian's going after, which is tying the lifetime of certain operations to the lifetime of the stream.
Okay, fair question. I'm sorry, second question while I have Q. How long, when you say I want to reference a prior ID, but that ID hasn't arrived, is it a DOS attack that I can basically reference IDs that I know will never arrive and the server has to queue them up in memory and wait? Is there a protection mechanism so that if I queue 10,000 IDs that don't exist, you don't run out of memory?
Yeah, I mean, you can, well, I mean, 10,000 was sort of fixed by the fact that you have stream flow control limits. So like you would have to have, issue enough stream limits for like 10,000 streams. So that's one problem. But yes, there's kind of like a timeout case that is expected. Like if it doesn't arrive in some reasonable period of time, then you're going to time it out. And that's fairly similar to the text we wrote for the auth kind of token compression sort of stuff where, if one incoming request for subscribed namespace references auth that like you haven't received yet, then, at some point you have to give up and time out. So,
Okay, thanks.
but thinking through like the BiDi stream per sequence of control messages. So, I mean, some things that don't work cleanly are things like if you do a request update in that world, you then have to specify like which request you are updating, which is doable, but it's is a substantially different design, and it, I don't think I understand the full implications of it. I would be a little concerned that it creates a bunch of problems that we're actually trying to solve here, and it might not fully solve them. So,
yeah, I just wanted to point out that we also need request ID and request update, because just within the BiDi stream, you need to OK or error those request updates and know what you're. I don't think we currently require the request receiver to respond to those in order. So you need to be able to. So for instance, like say I send two requests there are two request updates in rapid succession. The relay forwards them to the original publisher, and because of packet loss, I get the response to the second one first. I can go ahead and send that response.
There is an outstanding issue for kind of can you coalesce request updates into each other.
Okay.
I think probably the discussion of like exactly what you're talking about probably.
No, I think it's a slightly different issue. What if they're totally different request updates. One updates, I don't even know, but
I agree.
One's off and one's range. Yeah.
I agree they're separate issues, but I think it makes sense to discuss them in that context because they're all like kind of interrelated. But I think it's a good issue to discuss either way.
No, but I think Martin's point is right here. You need to have request ID still in request update, which we already said we needed for a different reason, but then you also need it in request OK and request error so that you know which update is being okayed. Right. Which is kind of a drag because
the other logically coherent thing to do is require like OK error to be in the stream to be sequenced by the order the request came in. My gut tells me that adds some state at the relay, which is sad. But that would also be coherent if we wanted to get rid of that field.
Yeah, at this point, I think it's easier to keep it. But all right. I don't know. I mean, the PR is in good shape, so people should feel free to take a look if you have any further comments. Okay. Should I hand it off to whoever, Switch or whoever's next? Or
can we just find out, does anyone, or maybe this is a question for the chairs, do we have consensus from the working group to merge a PR that is roughly in this shape, modulo whatever feedback we receive between now and Monday?
You feel that you've addressed all the comments in the PR?
I mean, it sounded like the main issue that I heard in Boulder was there was angst about losing the sequencing properties of the control stream, and the update to the PR provides you that if you want to recreate the draft 16 control stream, you pass 1 as your required delta in every request, and the receiver will deliver those messages in the same order it would have delivered them before. So I'm not sure. Are there any other outstanding, big reasons why we shouldn't merge this PR into the next draft version?
Well, I'd like to open the floor to see if there are any concerns or objections. I mean, we have been talking about this for a long time, and it seems you guys have stayed on top of the PR. Okay, well, no one's speaking up or raising their hand. I would say that regarding this is not a reason necessarily not to merge it, but the caution I would have is that a lot of our spec has been written with the assumption that these things are ordered and head of line blocked, these control messages, and it's impossible to prove that you fixed that necessarily, but there's always the possibility that we've broken something accidentally. That'll come out in implementation. So I would just ask you to be aware and sort of vigilant for that.
We can make a pass to see if there's anything that we missed or forgot about. But I think one thing in going through this that we realized is there may have been there was never a guarantee that the control messages were, that the only guarantee was that they were received by your QUIC stack in order. There was never even a guarantee that they were processed by the application in any given order. And there still may not be.
Well, that'd be sort of a perverse thing to do. I mean, if you kind of write the spec where it breaks, if you don't do it in order, then
what I mean is a perfectly valid implementation of draft 16 could receive 64K of control stream data, parse the messages, and send them each out to a different thread for processing. Like, no one says you can't do that.
Okay. Well, right.
And just because it happens to arrive on one QUIC stream doesn't mean anything to the application.
Fair enough.
Unless we say
so we're in a weird liminal state, like where we're like half BD now and half control stream. But if you rewind to draft 14 where everything's on one stream, that's going to break stuff like off token compression, and like we should probably if we just kept everything on one control stream, we'd probably want to add a sentence like, don't do that unless you you should not or must not do stuff like that. You must process in order because otherwise you're going to break all these mechanisms we have.
Yeah, I mean, we fixed the off control stream thing in 14.
Yeah, no, I understand we did that, but the point is that certainly in draft 14 there were a lot of things that depended on the single ordered control stream, and if you did an implementation like what Alan suggested and you didn't take account of that, you were going to break a bunch of mechanisms. Yep. So like if we decided like BID streams were a mistake and we went back to that, we should definitely add a language saying like you must process in order, or however you implement that is fine, but it must be in order.
Yeah, I mean, joining fetch is a key one that would potentially break, right? Because if you're like, oh, I got to subscribe, oh, I got to fetch, and you just delivered in the application and it was processed by some message queuing mechanism that didn't care about order, you'd see the fetch first and it would fail.
Okay. Well, anyway, like I don't want you to. My intent is not to make you prove that you haven't like broken something before you merge the PR. But if you haven't thought about it already, please take a quick look at it and then be ready for us to file some issues when you've overlooked something.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly spent a lot of time thinking about it, but
yeah,
because this has been open now for like a month.
Yeah. Okay, I've spoken enough. Suhas, are you out now?
No, I just wanted to kind of agree with your concern, Martin. Like, as much as I agree with Alan, but most of the implementations I kind of implicitly assumed something coming on the screens will be in the order and will process in the order in the application. Yes, we can implement stack in different ways, but that's an implied assumption because it was one stream, and that's how. That's the expectation, and I agree. I'm once we address the comments from today, I'll be reviewing, and I think this is at the point where we can go to the next level of getting it in the draft. Thanks.
Okay, so where were we on the conclusion of merging this? Or if you get enough the right editor review, etc., are you merging it then, or? Because we haven't heard anything against it, but you're currently not having the required for edit from author editor perspective.
So, I mean, even I haven't. It was updated like this morning, so even I haven't seen the most recent version. But the editors and authors will review it this week with the intention of merging it by Monday, which is the next draft.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It seems right to me. We don't have any big blockers. Modulo, whatever's in GitHub. All right. Well, it sounds like we are done with BD streams. Thank you for everyone who worked on that. It was it's quite an undertaking. Gwendol, if you're out there, I think we're ready to talk about Switch.
Yes, I am. How does it work, the screen share? I requested it.
Yes, I've approved it, so you should get control soon.
Okay.
I see the slides now at least. So.
It's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. So switch PR, and I think there are some questions which are, I mean, more generally for track switching. So just a reminder, very short, is that we would like the relay to switch a subscriber from one track to another track at a common group boundary between these two tracks. And so switch is a PR 1378, where, I mean, the client asks the relay to switch as soon as possible from one existing track to another one. And switch is not restricted to adaptive bitrate. It's only the client, based on some information it has, that it can switch. And there is a recent effort, I mean, post-Boulder from Will and the group for something which is called DTS, where the relay decides when to switch, on which track to switch based on throughput estimation. So this meeting is about switch, but some questions apply to both. And there were some, I mean, when we wrote switch with Ali, Safer, Will, we thought about a number of questions that I will go through the slides. I think each slide is one specific independent topic somehow. So we go for this. So it was one of the first questions that Alan asked last time, is what is a common group boundary? So common group boundary, what I said, I mean, at Boulder, that's it's the same group ID which is available at the relay for what we would call time-aligned tracks. So first question is, what is a group ID available? And this is a question that will have an impact on the design. Do we say that it is that we receive the first packet of first object in a group ID, and it's enough to say, hey, I'm receiving this group ID, and so this is good? Or do we wait for the first object of this group to be entirely received? Let's say that we at least have something to, I mean, as we say that the first object of a group is an independently decodable object, this is like we have something which is good. Or do we wait the whole group to arrive? Which is first question. I put the first packet of first object in bold because I believe it's the easiest and the quickest. And there are some other reasons. And then one question that comes often is, should we enforce time alignment between both tracks group ID? And in switch, because we wanted to keep it very simple, we said, well, two tracks with same group ID is, if the same group ID is available in the cache or in the memory of the relay, it means that it's a common boundary, whatever, I mean, regardless of whether one group ID from one track has arrived, I mean, half second, 1 second or more after the other one. It has a little problem, though. It is that sometimes you have the old track which is ahead of the new track as a relay, meaning that we receive track A, I mean, slightly before the track B. I mean, the group, the first object or first packet, or the what we call group ID available. Okay, and in that case, if we arrive at the end of one group that we are delivering, and we need to take a decision about, okay, what next group I will send. Okay, and in that case, if I receive the group N from the old track and I did not receive the N+1 from the new track, I can say there is no group boundary, and so in that case, I will never switch. So there is something which is an issue. And so when DTS has a timeout proposal, I mean, I did try to write a timeout proposal for Switch 6 months ago, and I never really managed to do this properly. So in DTS, there is something that says, well, when the relay, I mean, when one track is available at the relay, meaning, let's say, first packet, first object, then we start a timer, and there is an expiration at timeout, and all the tracks which have managed to send the first packet or first object of the same group ID before the timeout, they are, let's say, qualified or something like that. They are switchable. Okay. One of the, I mean, there are some limitations. Somehow, I think it's hard to choose a timeout because it depends on what we said. If it is first object or first packet or first object, this is not a big deal. But if it is the whole first object, then the time, it depends on the object group size and upstream jitter, upstream RTT. So it can be something which is a bit annoying. If the upstream has a congestion, then there is a bias because the low bitrate tracks will arrive much faster than the high bitrate tracks, and so the high bitrate tracks may not qualify. It is some extra computation at relay. I know the timer is not a big deal, but though it's something that we have to do for each pair of tracks in Switch, or for each group of tracks for DTS, plus memory of which group have been qualified in the past if we want to go in something which is in the queue. And there is one fundamental question, is that if I finished the group N, okay, and so I need to take a decision for the group N+1, and if my timeout has not expired, then what should I do? Should I start sending one track, or should I wait the end of the timeout to be able to take a decision for switching, which is something which can be hard. So overall, I was not completely clear about the DTS timeout. I mean, about timeout-based mechanisms for deciding what it is. That's why in Switch PR we have no time alignment enforcement, but that's good.
So I don't know if you noticed that you have MOQ.
Yeah, but I wanted to have the full slide and then we can discuss.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just a clarification question. Gwendolyn, when you say cache here, do you literally mean the MOQ concept of a caching relay? So Switch would only work for caching relays, or do you just mean, roughly objects arriving in a forwarding plane roughly at the same time, or does it actually have to be in a caching relay?
Yeah, I put memory as well to make sure that we understand. It is a bit related to one of the remarks from Alan in the email, saying the relay immediately sends what it receives to the transport queue. So for me, it is when we have two group ID in cache, if it is necessary, memory or queue, in that case, meaning that I can see from the relay perspective that I have these two group ID which are available, which I received as a relay.
Okay,
and
so
I understand.
it's not your intention to require a caching relay to implement Switch?
It's not mandatory as far as I can see it. It's just that if your subscriber lags behind live, eventually you will need to increase your memory. But if you have your max memory, I don't remember the name of it, but there is some parameters to say I cannot be that timeout from live. You don't necessarily need a cache, but still you still need to have some kind of memory to absorb the lag behind live, and this is how in this memory the relay can see two groups and to say, okay, I should choose one of the groups. This is how I see it, but you can put my camera if you want. Alan?
I mean, I kind of don't think there's a way you can implement switch without a cache. I mean, saying that your transport queue is also a cache is like, okay, but I don't see how it works unless this whole idea of I have the object that you want. Either it hasn't arrived yet, in which case you don't, or it has and you've saved it somewhere, in which case that's a cache. So, I mean, so I think we should be clear that like switch requires a cache because the current PR also says you don't send it upstream. So I don't, unless, am I misunderstanding? Is there a way that you could implement this without caching?
Let me just real quick clarify my question. I was asking specifically about a caching relay, as in it honors fetch. It supports fetches.
Oh, well.
Are you expecting that kind of a caching relay to be required for switch?
Okay. The PR as written doesn't currently mention fetch at all, which is a different concern that I raised in email, and I think in Boulder also, which is that like the switch PR currently does sort of the rewind-ish behavior where it's like, oh, I have these things in my cache, but I'm not sending them to you via fetch. I'm going to send them to you via subscribe streams.
Yeah, this is another slide later.
Okay.
We will be able to discuss this. I think it depends on what we call cache, you know. Maybe I have a little bias.
I guess I don't want to get into the super semantics of what's a cache and what's not. I mean, for what you have on this slide, I think if I was going to implement this, I would want the simplest thing, which is like, I've seen the beginning of the first object and that means it's available, but it opens additional questions I have about what do you do if somehow you don't, what if you have the first object, but not the second one and it's not coming? So
right.
Like,
this is for every, I mean, for every subscription, right? I mean,
well,
regardless of
it's back to your rewind behavior, which is like, I ended up with I have object 0 of a group that the switcher would like to switch to, but after I received that object, the upstream subscription failed, or like there's a bunch of holes in the cache, or there's nothing else there. There's not even upstream. And if I go resubscribe upstream, the upstreams move past it. So like it's a rewind problem, not a switch problem. I mean, effectively you're implicitly dependent on the rewind behavior for this, and that's not really defined. So anyway, I'll stop talking.
Well, so I don't think as a matter of logic you need to have a cache. I mean, so you could view this as a next group subscription to the new track. You know, it's a fad for me. I'm kind of in a mode where I like to see everything as sort of best effort. I think if you're a non-caching relay, if this is not a thing you pass upstream at all, but you have a subscription to the other track, then as a non-caching relay, you can implement that as essentially a next group filter, right? And you could get very bad luck where you essentially have to sit out a whole group. But that is what it is. If you do cache stuff, you could certainly deliver the next group ID. If the next group, if the old track is on N, if you have N+1 object 0 in cache, then you can absolutely, deliver that more or less right away.
Yeah,
I think if forgiving, we can absolutely implement this without a cache. It would be suboptimal, but it's something you could do. Will?
Yeah, on that point, where's my camera gone? Next group filter, you might end up with a gap in a non-caching relay because your group's going to arrive like 10 milliseconds apart, even in a perfect system. And if you're just 10 milliseconds ahead of what you're switching to, it's always behind you. So the one you're from is always behind. So the next group is going to be one away and you're going to have a gap. And I think that's just one of the consequences of having a non-caching relay. I think for MOQ to work well, you really want some level of cache. It might be a small cache. It might be a second or two, or whatever the duration of the groups that you're sending is probably what you should be able to hold in cache. But if you could hold 1 or 2 groups in cache, you get a lot more functionality out of MOQ transport than if you don't.
Yeah, this is a bit what I wanted to say about memory here, and this is related to Alan's remark. If you want to take informed decision about the common group boundary, you need to refrain yourself from sending immediately all your stuff to the transmission queue. You still need to have some form of buffer at the MOQ level, not at the QUIC level, to be able to say, okay, I'm checking that what is the best decision to take. And at this level, it would be like not like a cache relay, because caching is a bit more like a CDN stuff, but more something to say, well, I want to play with the way I send object and groups to downstream somehow. Suhas.
I kind of agree with Gwendal. Even if you want to do something like the ABR, the DTS, that the thoughts have been that you need to give some time to make a choice, and during that time there might be something less uh, useful one be available, and you have to make until you can make a choice. You need to buffer somewhere.
Correct.
This point, maybe we are trying to address a common feature we are trying to across these kind of requirements, is that how would a relay which might be non-caching in the sense of the CDN caches or anything, but it can define this buffering ability, that way it can wait for few seconds or whatever the decision criteria is to make the choice. I think this kind of pattern is arriving across multiple of these solutions in one way or the other way.
Yeah, so I mean, this is like this is something like this, like a buffering relay, or a relay that can take some decisions based on what it has in queue before sending it to the QUIC. Then the timeout. In fact, we have I mean, this is why I didn't put any timeout in the switch PR. It's definitely possible to adjust the DTS timeout proposal to switch in some forms, but we have a deadline, which is that at the end of group N, we need to take a decision. Okay, and maybe the group N+1 is there for 1 second, or maybe it's there for just 15 milliseconds. But whatever, I need to take a decision at the end of group N. And so for me, it is a natural timeout, which does not depend on any pre-configured settings from the subscriber. But
So
that's
one concern I have there is that,
there's a
like,
queue.
oh, sorry, I'm driving, so I did not see.
Okay, no worries. So yeah, to like add to my earlier point, because I just realized it. So as an individual, one powerful thing about this is the fact that it's a unitary message to control this. So if you are in a non-caching relay and you are very unlucky with the groups, so that N+1 has already gone by, so I have to wait for N+2, I can just continue to deliver the old track for one more group, so that I don't have a break in the media, even though it's obviously not exactly what you want. It allows you to sort of be very sophisticated. I don't just the relay knows what its cache state is, and so it can sort of make a decision because it knows the unsubscribed and subscriber are linked in a single transaction. It can sort of decide what is best to do given the state of its cache, which I think is pretty powerful. Suhas.
Yeah, I'm just trying to talk about the timeout. It does feel that even though end of group might be an actual timeout without being explicit about it, but end of group might get delayed or might not happen in the time you need, and that's where some kind of a timeout would help not have long deeper buffers in the MOQ stack. Maybe having something like that is good, a kind of defensive argument to have that.
okay.
There's some questions in the chat about what this does that other things existing mechanisms can do, which I tend to agree with Will's comments that the relay does have more information. So I wasn't really trying to argue against that. I think I was just getting confused about exactly like what's going on here and what the intended behavior of the relay is. from like there's the kind of prescriptive, like this is the algorithm, but then there's just conceptually, like what is the relay trying to accomplish? I think I'm probably more interested in the latter. Like it's more important that, the track plays smoothly and with the desired like delivery timeout or something. So if I was going to pick a timeout, I'd probably go with something like that, since the tracks already have it. But I don't know. But I actually wanted to talk about, so the implication is the group IDs are aligned for the tracks involved. Is that correct?
Well, this whole story about time alignment is that, somehow if the subscriber has requested a switch between two tracks, it is because he believes that these tracks are aligned. And so the alt group in the catalog is typically expecting to have time-aligned tracks. But what we know is that, well, it will never be completely aligned, right? I mean, you cannot enforce something which is like milliseconds. And so given that we can be very close to live, when it is the end of the group N, you need to send something after it. And if you only have the old track, well, you will continue the old track. If you have something which is another track, I mean, the other track which is available, you will say, hey, this is a group boundary, I can switch. If you did not receive any information for group N+1 from the new track, you cannot know if group N+1 exists. And so you cannot know if you can actually switch to this. So because, sometimes one old track can have like a group number 20, 21, 22, 23. And the track B can have group 20, 22, 24, 26. And so, this is possible. They have common group boundary, 20, 22, 24, but it's not mandatory for, that. So you cannot say, okay, I stop the group 20 from all track because probably the group 21 will come from the new track. If you have not received it, you cannot say that, right? So that's why we need to have some kind of enforcement or not to this. But we need to wait somehow if we have a timeout, which is a bit of a problem.
Alan pointed out that we're getting behind, so maybe we should try to get to the slides. Apologies, but thanks.
Should I go to the next slide? It was another question that came during the discussion we had at Boulder. So should we pre-warm or should we do on-demand subscribe? So typically switch, we ask the subscriber to have an existing track, which is the old track, okay? And it creates something, it asks to switch to something which will be a new subscription. So we request the relay to create a new subscription for this new track. And that was a question from Mo at Boulder saying, well, we should authorize the switch between two tracks which are existing, because we can, subscribe to the new track with forward equals 0 and ask to switch exactly when we want, and so that we are sure that it works. And in DTS, this is exactly what is defined: preliminary subscriptions to all the possible tracks, and then you switch when you want. So what are the pros and cons of both? The on-demand subscription, the pros is that you don't need to send a subscribe before sending a switch. So it's a 0 RTT, you can switch whenever you want, and you don't impose the relay to have established subscription for all the possible tracks you may switch in the future, which is for me a DOS issue. The cons of it is that sometimes you ask for a switch as a relay, and because there was no established subscription for this upstream for this track, the relay has to create a new track, a new subscription, and it can take some time to get the data. depending on the RTT to the original publisher. The pre-warming, well, it is the opposite, right? You are sure that you have an established subscription at the relay, so you have probably some object in cache, memory, buffer, or whatever, and so it's much easier to. I mean, you have more guarantee that you can switch fast. The problem that you need to have some. You need to send a subscribe before sending your switch. You have a one RTT if you want to be sure this, to get the subscribe OK from the relay, and you will create a lot of possible subscription at the relay, which is not something I like. Alan.
So I'm very confused by this presentation because the first time I heard the letters DTS was 20 minutes ago, and I have no idea. It sounds like there's a lot of context that you and some other people who are involved in writing that draft have that I and possibly other people in this working group have no context for, and it makes it hard. Like, you're trying to compare. Like, I've read the Switch PR and I came ready to talk about Switch, but now we're also comparing it to something that I haven't read, and it feels strange. So I'm not sure what input you're seeking right now, but I don't feel prepared to give you whatever that is if we're comparing it to something that it was not sent out in advance.
Yeah, sorry about this. Well, I mean, here it's not sorry, but you can just remove DTS from this slide to say, well, in Switch we expect the new track to be something for which we don't have subscription, and an alternative to it is to request the new track to be an established subscription.
So that was something we did talk about in Boulder, which is should, like, the current definition in 1378 says you include a full track name, and if there's not already a subscription, you make one. And I think maybe Colin or someone else had a suggestion that it was like, maybe you require those IDs to reference already established subscriptions, which means you need to have one established before you attempt to switch to it. Even if that means you send the subscribe and the switch in like the same flight because you want to switch to something that you aren't subscribed to. And I think that I haven't thought all the way through it, but I think that probably reduces some of the complexity of Switch to just say, like, you have to have a subscription for it. And even if you're making it immediately before switching. So I think I like it better.
Well, it's supposed to make it less complex at the relay, but well, if you send a subscribe and if you immediately send a switch to this subscribe, then you are not sure that the relay is doing well. So I'm not completely sure it's improved the complexity stuff, and it adds one extra message for it.
I agree it's an extra message, and I think I also agree that it's not materially. It's not. I mean, the relay might have processed a subscribe, and it may be searching upstream when it processes the switch. So at that point, it's kind of him of having him there. But my general philosophy is I prefer composability of things rather than baking things together. But others may have different preferences. So.
Yeah, so this is an argument against what Alan just said. There's a case if you're pre-warming your tracks, there's an expense involved, right? You're pulling that track to the edge, but it's not being delivered to the client. And there's certain distributors who might not work that way for all their ABR content. They only want to be pulling what people are consuming because that's what they pay to deliver. So in that case, I think it's fair. Switch can easily operate in two modes. It can operate in a mode where it just establishes the new upstream subscription for you and cancels the prior one, and it's just sitting there toggling subscriptions. Or it can be in a mode where you, the client, establish the subscriptions, give them to Switch, and then you simply tell it to forward, not forwarded. Both of those are viable mode, and both have business use cases that make them valid.
Yeah.
I think relays are just going to do, right, in terms of like whether they're pulling, I know I think our spec says, oh, someone subscribes in forward 0, like the relay better go get that track. But like, I have a feeling that people are just going to implement this in ways that make sense for their business. And I think that's fine. And I think it's not any different for Switch, right? Like whether even if we just said you have to have a subscription in advance, like there's no guarantee that the relay is polling it. Like it just means that you have a subscription ID.
Well, I mean, I think it is possible to update the PR to allow both modes, meaning that we can say that track namespace and track name is optional, and if they are missing, we expect the new request ID to be something which is existing. That if this is so that we could cover 2 modes, right? So we could cover the mode where we have nothing on its disaster recovery switch, and I did not pre-warm anything. I just want to switch ASAP. And the other mode, which is like okay, I feel I'm getting bad, I subscribe to the new track, and then after some time I switch because actually it's bad. I think that the 2 modes are possible. It's just an adjustment in the PR. Suhas.
Just a thought here, like going back to Will's presentation in Boulder about having the switching set ID. I know it's used for different use case, but and being able to subscribe update where you say, I want this switching set ID to be switchable now, versus instead of, I'm trying to go to the point here that having I know you have switch message, but if we kind of go in the direction of what Will proposed about having switching set ID, that means these 2 tracks I want to switch one versus the other, which is like one of the things I want to switch to, and I want to tell when to do the switch. Would that be something meeting the requirements that what 1378 does?
Yeah, if we say that pre-warming is something that we actually want, in that case, indeed, we can have a behavior closer to what was presented at Boulder, meaning that instead of saying something which is switch me after some throughput estimation, you can say switch me ASAP. And in that case, we remove the throughput and parameters in the switching set, and we can ask for this. But I do think switch is something where you don't need the relay to subscribe to multiple tracks for nothing, and you want to have a switch as fast as possible. So it's
right. I'm not kind of enforcing the requirement that you need to have pre-warm. Again, as an application, if you know that these are the tracks I want to switch, it always has 2 options, right? If it's okay to pre-warm or get to the edge, it can subscribe to all and put them all in the same switching set ID, and it can trigger when the switch has to happen, even though the data is at the relay. On the other hand, as an application, it can be lazy and say, no, now is the time I want to add another new subscription to this switching set group to enable the switch, and that's possible too. I think the applications will do both as we will suggested, and I don't think so we should complicate the proposal with either, but I was just trying to see if we can kind of build on what Will proposed. I think we can see similar functionality with adding as a parameter to subscribe, and also doing an update with now I want to switch, and it works for both the cases as you're referring to.
Mo?
Yeah, I think it's simpler machinery and messaging if we allow the subscriptions to be established beforehand. And I think we should probably relax the language in the spec. If it says anything about, the forward flag should pull objects to the relay, we should probably relax that and just say that this expresses interest in the track, so that relays may optimize for lower latency delivery of the track, and not say anything about it really should pull the track objects in. But one thing that's bugging me in the draft, what I'm doing updates to other things, is this way to establish subscriptions in multiple ways is making the text ugly everywhere. And it's actually leaving a lot of holes also where we miss, well, what if it was a publish versus a subscribe, or versus subscribe namespace? So all the different ways that subscriptions can be established is complicating the draft. And if we add one more in a switch message, I think it makes it even worse. So I would prefer to have, actually, I prefer to have a single way to establish all subscriptions. You know, make the subscribe answer be publish, not subscribe okay. But that's a orthogonal thing. But I think minimizing the number of ways that we establish subscriptions is better. So use the existing ways that we establish them and relax the language that says anything about forward equals 0 means pull the objects to the edge.
Well, yeah, it has some cons, so but okay.
Yeah, but for all the pre-warming fans, though, remember that switch is not only about ABR switching, which we keep talking about it in, right? Switch is any client preference that it wants to express. So imagine I'm a VR headset and the user is turning their head and I'm selecting slices of the world that I want to subscribe to, right? I don't want to subscribe to the entire world all the time because it's an 8K stream and I just can't do that in order to be able to switch between two of those slices. So I just want to be alternating my subscriptions as I turn my head. So that's a non-ABR use case where I think we definitely want the ability not to have to pre-warm everything because the universe of what I pre-warm is impractical.
Yeah, I think that there is room for both. So we can, yeah, I mean, we can adjust this.
So I locked the queue because, Glenda, we're more than halfway through, and I think you're about halfway through your slides. So let's get through the slides. If they're clarifying questions, do clarifying questions, then we can have a discussion about this.
Oh, well, it's one slide per, I mean, I think that...
Okay, finish your presentation is what I'm telling you to do.
Okay. So this one is well, this one is a remark that that Alan raised by email. So sometimes you have subscribers who lag behind live, so typically receiving the relay receiving the group number 34, but what it is actually sending to the subscriber is a group number 30 is in the example. And so the relay has to accumulate objects from both tracks in cache or memory or buffer or transmission queue or whatever. And if it receives a switch, it may identify a boundary, a common group boundary. Here it is a group number 32. And so it receives this, and it is in its buffer. And so in switch, there is a new subscription that will be created, right? I mean, this is something, so we expect after the group number 31, which will be delivered on the subscription track A, it will send the group number 32 from track B. And so I felt a bit puzzled by the fact that we get object from cache or from buffer or from whatever, and we send them in a subscription. And at the same time, it's like, well, this is what we are doing for track A. So why would not be why would it not be possible in track B, although we are doing this for track A? And it came from something where it maybe that we received group number 32 because we did a joining fetch when we received the switch. And here it is even worse because we receive data from a joining fetch and we are sending it in a subscribe, which looks a lot like the rewind proposal. And so I wanted to make sure people are more comfortable or not at all comfortable about this. But I don't see how we can do anything different. And I don't want to break the major paradigm of fetch subscribe. but I wanted to have your opinion about it. So Alan.
Yeah, I think what is in the PR right now is exactly, you know, shades of what is going to be in the rewind proposal when we see it. And so I think either we sort of table switch until we decide what we're doing with rewind, or we need to add, basically switch needs to joining fetch the new track. So if you're switching, so the way it would work is like, if you're going to 32 in your slide and that is in cache, the switch opens a fetch stream until it and delivers everything. I don't even know what, I mean, basically you would get like a subscribe okay that said largest object looks like it would be something like 33-ish. And then it would open a joining fetch stream and start sending you cached objects for 32 and 33. And then the subscribe streams for track B would open at the end of group 33 or the beginning of group 34. And those would be coming on subscribe streams.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't have this issue with track A, right? We will send 31, 32, 33 with subscribe. So just because the subscribe has been created before, then we allow this and not.
It's a push versus, in my universe, it's a push versus pull construct. When you're subscribed, like the subscriber is subscribed to track A, objects are coming in and they're being put in the subscriber's queue immediately, and they're in parallel being written to the cache. But everything is getting sort of immediately pushed to that subscriber. It's weird, and it's control. I mean, I have concerns about rewind too. So this is not new, and everyone heard me talk about it in Boulder. And maybe we're going to do rewind because I think everybody else loves it for some reason. So maybe I don't need to voice my objection too strongly here. But like, my only point is that the behavior you're describing is the same behavior that's in that proposal. And if you can do it for switch, you should be able to do it for everything. And if you can't do it for the other things, you can't do it for switch. I'll just leave it there.
Any other remark, or do you want me to go through the old slides? You want me to go through the old slides? Okay. Yeah, this is kind of the same. There is something new in the update I did on the PR, is that there is a target group ID, which is a parameter which is sent by the subscriber, and it's supposed to address Luke's case, which was also Kulen's case, which is like, well, I started sending a group, which is, let's say, 31, and I have a very bad congestion, so I want to stop this current track now, and I want to redo the same group with the new track. So it means that if the target group ID is the group that the relay is delivering for the old track, the relay is sending G0, G1, GX for the old track, and then it must stop sending the old track. It should flush the object in the queue. Maybe it should console the quick streams, which was delivering this object 1 to X. And then it starts sending a new track, G0, G1, blah, blah, from the cache, from memory, buffer, whatever. So is it reasonable? I mean, I put it into the PR because it was a specific request from Boulder. Duplicates obviously occur, which is something that we wanted to avoid in Switch, but in that case it is because the subscriber actually asked for this, and the subscriber should deduplicate. So it means that it should remove all the first group that it received from the old track because it received new track in the end. So it is something that the video player are doing every day in the ABR, HLS dash. Sometimes they even go in the past. Sometimes when they have a big buffer, they can go 2 groups in the past and say, hey, I received this from the old track, but I do prefer having the new track because maybe it's a higher resolution typically, so it can improve the quality. So it is something that the video player can do, but it requires the video player to be informed that it's a duplicate and something. And so the question is, do we need any notification that it actually works? Well, actually, if the video, if the subscriber sent a switch with a target group ID for object that it already received. And if it receives a new object from this group ID for the new track, it can say, okay, I just flash all the system. I mean, all what I receive for the old track. But this is something that requires a bit of a notification, I guess, or not. I think it's enough to not send anything, but the same here. Open to questions and opinions and remarks.
Does it only switch? Does it only do this behavior if target group ID is the G switch?
Yeah.
Like if there's okay, so if I said if I'm getting group 10 and I like no, I want to switch and I don't care, I want you to blow away group 10, but group 10 of the switching to track is not available yet.
Well, in that case, it will wait for a common group boundary. So
this
algorithm.
Only, this would only work in the case where the relay already has a subscription and already has the current group, or presumably
Correct.
it's the current. It's the subscriber's current group, and it only works in so I think that's probably fine. In general, sort of the implicit one thing. I mean, Switch has kind of these implicit behaviors in terms of like, oh, when you get the first object of the thing, you know it worked. But I would sort of prefer more explicit signaling generally. But I haven't thought about it. I think I missed this when I reviewed. So, kind of like more explicit signals.
And it's only a problem of notification if you have the close after switch equal 0, which means that the old track, it means that the relay does not unsubscribe, just turn the old track into forward equal 0. And in that case, you don't send any message to notify this. And so, but at least this is possible. So the algorithm now is, okay, I check all the possible common group boundaries starting from the target group ID to wherever am I. And so even if this group ID is a current group and the relay already sent something, we just flash this and we switch immediately. So I think the algorithm is still defined properly in the PR, but and so yeah, I just wanted to conclude that the algo as a relay described is that so the common group boundary is defined as so G0. Okay, I can change something to say if I receive the first packet of the first object and present on both tracks, it relay is good. Target group ID used as a lower bound for common group boundary, and we have, I mean, I added a liveness timeout mechanism that says if I don't find any group boundary, common group boundary, then it fails. Error codes timeout, so the relay could not see any switch option, doesn't exist. Target track is not available. And I added something which is not supported. The relay does not support the switch extension, which is something that is also debatable. Sorry, Magnus, I didn't see you were on queue. Sorry.
Yeah, I was actually on the previous one, but I'm trying to understand what this really does with what is the semantics we end up with in subscribes for these cases, because this seems to be getting us very, very far away from deliver what's, I mean, the very basic case of subscribe is deliver what's next coming into the relay. This is saying, oh, deliver what's from the past. Doesn't it imply that? Or do I misunderstand what this is talking about?
No, you're right. It's close in spirit to the rewind.
Or joining fetch, kind of what you would do joining fetch if you would start from the scratch. You would do joining fetch in these cases. You would join the subscribe and then you would backfill with fetch to the start of the boundaries.
Yeah.
Boundary.
Well, you know, it is to cover this kind of use cases where you were having something like 10 megabits per second, and and then suddenly you fall to something which is 1 megabits per second, and so you will it will take you forever to get the full group. And so if you wait the next group to switch to, then you will buffer and you will have some issues. So it's better to just stop immediately sending this high level videos, and you want to switch to the lowest possible resolution that survive the congestion. So this is something where I want to stop, and you want to indeed go something which is slightly in the past. But I agree that it's something which is close in spirit to rewind.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, Alan.
So was the next slide your last slide?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I have a few questions. One, I saw this not supported, and I asked in my email, but so the way the current PR reads is this is a complete extension. Is the idea that it's completely optional for a relay to implement this? And if that's true, doesn't every client basically need to have the relay supports switch, I'll use switch. The relay doesn't support switch, I will implement switch in whatever way you have to implement it now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I mean, to me,
well,
that undermines the argument for having switch, which is like, we don't want to have to implement, clients don't want to have to implement track switching in whatever way they are currently doing it. And so like you're saying like, oh, well, they're going to implement that anyway. And then there's this optimization that's available sometimes.
No, but I acknowledge the fact that the relay has to be smart, and it should have some kind of a queuing mechanism, which might be something disturbing for some applications. And I can imagine some CDN having some relay with switch because they support live streaming, and some CDN having MOQ relay without switch because they are specialized into video conferencing. And but it's a proposal. I mean, this is something that.
People heard my opinion in Boulder too, which is like, at this point, I'm all for like. Make an extension, let's go. And but so like I'm happy if we're like, this is completely negotiable and you don't have to support it, then like that's fine. But I just didn't understand if that was really what you were trying to get.
Will?
Yeah. Sorry, opposite point of view. I don't want it to be a negotiable extension for the reason you just indicated, right? It gives me no determinism in my client population. I can't, if I'm delivering something from a CDN and that CDN suddenly doesn't support it, my client's screwed pretty much. I don't typically have an option to jump to another CDN at a whim. So I would like it to be very much part of core MOQ transport protocol. I don't think it's that complicated. The relay may differ in how well it implements it. That's a different thing, right? If you're building a relay with absolutely zero cache, I think you're going to get diminished performance in many areas. Many of the attributes we deliver in MOQ, and switch might be one of them, but it should still function. So I would really vote for it to be a core property and not a core behavior, and not one that is negotiated and optional.
Would be very happy to remove all these parts about the extension. It's something which, I agree with you, but I can see people sharing. So,
all right. Thank you for the presentation, Gwendol. Like as chair, I think there's still a lot of confusion about this proposal. I think there are numerous things you asked for feedback about. I also think that this is not, there's still a lot of like degrees of freedom being negotiated here. There's also this other concern about rewind, which is out there. I hope to have a public, just in the interest of transparency, I hope to roll out today a written proposal for that, which is again some weird interactions with this. It's very challenging to manage multiple proposals that have somewhat overlapping functionality, that maybe they don't completely replace each other. To some extent, we need to sequence things and grab I like ask people to sort of grab one thing at a time and look at that. And it sounds like this needs quite a bit more engagement on the PR, both to like resolve the comments that have come in, and also to kind of make a concrete proposal regarding some of the questions that you've asked today. Do you agree with that, Gwendol?
Yeah, I mean, we so it's possible to have the two modes for new and old. Pre-warming and subscription. This is doable. For queuing, I don't know what to do to improve this. If people can put me some comments directly into the PR in the paragraph that look not good, they can send it to me. I'll send it into the GitHub, and I'm not the only one to write this, right?
Okay, so to the extent you have ambiguous feedback on how to improve the PR, please do so. Okay. If there are other questions, are there any questions you have on the group that have not been for the group on how to proceed that have not been answered yet in this presentation?
Well, I think this common group boundary, it's still something which is, I don't see any consensus from these slides. Okay. I don't know if we need to use timeout or not. Without timeout, I think it is simpler, and I think we have this natural timeout of the previous group finishing the stuff, and I heard the two part of it, and if we need to have a timeout, it's complexified the algorithm, and so it would mean a significant change in the PR, which is a bit annoying. But if people think that it's mandatory to have this, then okay.
Okay. Well, are you still in the queue, or is that from before? Alan.
I hadn't thought about this timeout problem until today, so I need to give more, and I'm not sure I totally followed it, so I need to go back and think. But I had a different question about common group boundary that I put in my email, which is like about it it talks about what's available, but at least in my relay implementation, there's things that are available, and then there's I might have queued a bunch of stuff up for the slow subscriber who's asking to switch. And some of it may have been initially transmitted to them, and some of it may not have been. And is there guidance, or do we want to be more specific about what we're actually asking for here? Like, are you trying to say the lowest group that has not started transmission to that subscriber? Or is there some other detail? Or are we just saying like, that's totally, relays just pick. It just has to be common. That's the only thing. And relays that can do better will do better.
Right. I think that the relay receiving a new group from the old track should not sending immediately to the transmission queue, and should wait a bit to identify if it's possible to switch at this point or not. That would be, but it comes into some implementation details, I would say.
Because I don't want to. If you have to regulate the trend, we shouldn't say like you have to write it this way. But if there is a behavior that you need, it should be the group that hasn't been sent yet, then that just needs to be clarified in the PR. That's what I'm asking for.
Yeah, but if you send every new object you receive in queue, then you would need to have a mechanism to, cancel this object from the queue.
Right. I just need to know if I need that behavior or not. And the PR doesn't say exactly what it wants. That's my concern. Like, if you're like, if it's really like, because this subscriber is one or more groups behind. And so presumably. And so like saying like, the common group boundary is one which has not started transmission, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
That detail would be useful.
Yeah. So this is, for me, it's something which is, so relay, I have the two groups from both tracks. I mean, the same group for both tracks. I have seen that. So I can transmit either of each. And this is what I want. And I want to transmit the new track instead of the old track. And if by any implementation details, I already send them to the transmission queue, I need to remove this. But this is coming into some implementation details, because I said as a relay, I just saw the two, I mean, the same group and two tracks, where they are in transmission queue, in cache, in buffer, or wherever else. It's just details. I mean, just implementation details. Mo?
Yeah, I think what would help me is to understand what the target thing that the relay is trying to optimize is. That way we would know. It seems like we have a mix of some client signals and some client behavior, and then some relay, knowledge and some relay behavior. If we just knew exactly what the target thing to optimize is, and deliver all the client state, in whatever message it is, and then the relay just uses that state and does whatever decision that optimizes whatever it's trying to optimize. Is it the switching time that's trying to optimize? Is it the bandwidth minimization, to not have two tracks on the wire? Whatever it's trying to optimize, clearly state what that is, and then let the relay decide how to do the switch to optimize that using whatever state that it can, get from the client at the same time. If it wants to know the client's current group, I would think not just group. You want to know current group and object. You want to know where the client's head is. Where's the client's live head? Give that up in your message, and then let the relay decide from then on. Okay, I'm trying to minimize switching latency. I will go to this group boundary, and I will do the switch there. That would make things a lot clearer for me, because right now I'm confused about the mix between client preferences and server preferences and what we're actually trying to optimize.
Yeah. So but sorry, but I think the PR is saying it clearly. The client sends the message switch, and when the relay receives a switch, it wants to switch at the next command boundary it sees. And I don't know how to say it more. This is what we want to.
But now I thought we have Luke's wrinkle of adding the target group ID, which is giving client state up to the relay to factor in its decision. Right?
Well, this is added because people ask me to add this, but so then it makes the life a little bit more complicated. But it's still something which is, try to switch me as soon as possible. But to this, you need the relay to know that B has a group boundary, which is, I don't know how to say this differently. I can, feel free to take the PR and to rewrite this in a different way. I'm completely open to this. And we can, I don't know.
Okay, we're quitting time. Thanks, Gwendol, again for presentation. Again, I would encourage you to address whatever ambiguous feedback you received. Just as sort of a meta comment, if it's possible to find an MVP that maybe reduces some of the knobs here, I think it'll be more tractable for people. You can always have other PRs that add additional features to switch if people want them. But I think it seems like people are confused partly because of all the variability and uncertainty that's tied with this. So that would be my high-level feedback to you. Hopefully this is productive. It sounds like we're going to talk about this again at some point. Yeah. So in the meantime, please take a look at the PR, as Alan has suggested in the chat. Like I think people actually reading the text and making concrete suggestions about it would be way better than the PowerPoint engineering this. Yeah. Alan, do you have something very quick to say?
It's very quick, but it's not about Switch. Just letting people know the draft deadline is Monday, and there are 20-some PRs in flight, and I think the editors would like to land about 15 of them. So if you want to opine, please do. Your feedback will be addressed. and we will follow our normal procedure for landing things that have been up for a certain amount of time and resolving comments and have the appropriate approvals.
But the interrupt target is draft 16 for the hackathon.
The
correct?
interrupt target will continue to be draft 16.
Excellent.
No
Okay.
confusion.
All right. We're at stop. So thank you all for participating. We will see you in Shenzhen if you are so inclined, and otherwise we'll see you on MeetEcho. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye.